From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. On the second half of the program today, tens of thousands of pages from the 38 Studios lawsuit was released. We'll have a reporter's roundtable to fill you in on what we found so far. But first, tensions are running high between the Providence firefighters and the administration of Mayor Jorge Elorza. A new shift schedule has led to a lawsuit, and now the top public safety official says he's looking into possible abuse of the injured on duty system. Our guest for the first half of Newsmakers is Providence Public Safety Commissioner Stephen Pare and President of the Providence Firefighters Union, Paul Doughty. And to my right is panelist WPRI.com reporter Dan McGowan. Ted Nesi is off this week. Should tell everybody that Dan covers Providence covers the city of Providence for Eyewitness News. Commissioner, thank you for joining us. Paul, it's really good to have you guys both back on the program.
Thank you.
All right, before we get into litigating the shift schedule here, I want to bring up a story that Dan filed earlier this week. Paul, 3 members of the Firefighters Union Executive Board called out of their 14-hour shifts last week to picket the mayor at an event. The commissioner wants the union to reimburse the city. Is that going to happen?
The commissioner and I are going to have that discussion, I think, in his office or somewhere besides TV. We've had a great working relationship for 5 years, and it's my belief that that will continue.
A lot of people weren't happy when they read that taxpayers were essentially subsidizing firefighters to go picket the mayor in their black suits, and called out, and those shifts had to be filled. How do you defend it?
It's a little complex, but as a settlement of several grievances, running grievances regarding failure to call back firefighters according to the contract, there's a bank of time that builds up, and we withdraw time from that bank. So whether the union officials used it or someone else used it, it would have been utilized.
The bottom line is, though, those shifts had to be covered, right?
They would have had to have been covered whether we went to that event or not. Commissioner,
you, in the article, in Dan's article, you'd like the union to reimburse the city, but the city approved this.
So clearly it's not union business. When you picket, you are out there doing politicking, getting support for whatever your position is, and clearly, time off for union business is what we honor, and the request came in that fashion. And I think that the city should not be, or the taxpayers should not be paying as a result of picketing at any event, and that's what appeared to have happened.
So when you say that the time off request came in, and you guys didn't know it was to picket the mayor?
Correct.
When
it was just a request for union business, and typically we honor that, and
so
that's what happened.
Isn't that the heart of what this? I assume it's in the CBA. It's in the collective bargaining agreement for this union business. Isn't that what it's about? To have meetings, to negotiate contracts, not to picket?
Well, there's 2 categories of time off, and that's where we kind of get down into the weeds. There's one where you have release time, which is contained in almost every collective bargaining agreement, whether it's private or public sector. And then there's time off, which was settlement of a previous grievance, and there was no restrictions put on the use of that time. That was
so if you want to go on an Easter egg hunt.
Correct.
You can go on an Easter egg hunt, and they'll have to fill your shift because of that.
Or if we didn't solve the grievance, they would have had to fill the shift either way. So it's cost neutral. It doesn't cost any money.
Do you agree with that? Cost neutral? Is it just a murky part of the collective bargaining agreement that can be used however they want?
It is a bit murky. It is a understanding that goes back several years, and I think we need to have a better understanding of what the city's position is and how that time is afforded to the union. So it's not clear, and times in which there's picketing or other events, we as a city will be scrutinizing that. So,
what about the optics of it, Paul? You worried about that?
No, and even if I look at the amount of time we've already spent on this in this discussion, it's just a distraction from the real issue, and that is if the city loses the litigation with the shift change, that's the news story. The mayor to this point has not answered what happens if he loses, and then handicapped what his chances of losing are. I came up on a statistic from Nicole Benjamin from Adler, Pollock and Sheehan, and she suggests statistically there's a 10% chance that the person that's trying to get your appeal overturned is going to be successful. So the city is well down this road. At this time, considering an appeal to the Supreme Court, where just statistically, and I get it's not on the merits, but statistically only 10% are reversed. And I think that's the optics, and that's what everyone should be looking at. This sideshow about whether we should or shouldn't be using the time is something that the commissioner and I are very capable of working on.
Paul, to that point, you know, you were at the Finance Committee meeting last night talking about a $5 million deficit for the fiscal year that we just ended. Obviously, going forward, there are some real financial problems. The mayor has spoke about it a lot. You've said we'd be willing to sit down and do something about it. What are you willing to put on the table?
Well, I'm not going to give away my entire negotiating strategy, but certainly
give us something.
Well, I don't think it's fair to start negotiations with our starting point having been moved. If we were to be able to return back, even on paper, to the shift schedule that we had, let's take a look at what we can do from that point. But essentially, we're negotiating with a gun to our head. He implemented that change without any study, and if you'll note, Central Falls just reviewed whether the 4 to 3 shifts would save money. They declined to implement it. Cumberland has a study going now, which they studied before they implemented it, and the results of that study are going to lead them to the decision not to implement it. North Providence just negotiated a schedule. They chose not to implement it. Warwick just negotiated a schedule. They chose not to implement it. So anybody that's taken the time to review the cost, the likelihood of winning, has opted not to do it.
But we're hearing a lot about what you don't want to happen. What are you willing to do?
It depends. First, I need to see what the situation of the city is. So far, they've been less than forthcoming on providing us with documents. They forced us to use the access to public records request to even get fundamental documents about the city's finances. So we need to establish a little bit of trust. I don't think being told the night before a press conference that you're going to change a shift really instills that, and nothing since that point has reversed that.
So, yeah, you know, this mayor came in, did an independent study, and that study clearly indicated that we were facing in the next 5 to 6 years an $85 million structural deficit. The city is in trouble. We're spending $9 million in overtime in the fire department. We have people that make a lot of money. One person, $100,000 in overtime. The system is broken. It's all financially driven. And we're at this point because of the finances in the city and the cost of fire services.
But you were let me just ask you it this way.
Sure.
You were a Rhode Island State Trooper. You worked your way up through the ranks and elevated all the way to Colonel before becoming Public Safety Commissioner. If Colonel Stone all of a sudden said to you, I'm adding 13 hours to your work week and you get no extra pay.
It's 14.
Okay, thank you. 14 extra hours when you average it out, no extra pay. How do you think that would go over?
That happened. Mm-hmm. As I was a young trooper and the detectives, the administration was allowed to work you a number of hours without compensation. I know times have changed and laws have been put in place to prevent that kind of thing. I used to work a lot of hours for the same pay. I understand the dynamic here, increasing the hours for the firefighters. I understand the change in the culture. They're used to 4 days off a week, and now it's 2. I get all that, but the big picture is the city's in trouble financially, and if we do nothing, then it's going to get worse, and we need to do something to permanently restructure, so we're not paying a firefighter over $100,000 in a callback every single year and costing us $9 million.
It seems like the big problem here is minimum manning. Firefighters have to have 94 people on duty at all times in the city of Providence. I wonder, could the job be done with 80 people on duty?
Perhaps. You know, we never looked at a study. One was done years ago, probably dated, but that's one of the drivers, where you have minimum manning. And is it at the right number? Could it be less? And those are all options.
What do you think?
Well, you've said that you've been willing to consider this, correct?
Right. I mean, there's things that we could get out of a negotiation that would benefit the firefighters, and we recognize the finances of the city. But what I don't agree with is criticizing the firefighters because one of them earned $100,000. It's really become the mayor's one salient talking point, and it's true. But what he glosses over is the fact that that's a direct result, and there's a direct correlation between the total number of firefighters available to work and the number of shifts to be filled. So he criticizes the firefighter that worked that money, he earned it, yet he does nothing to change that. And the simple way to change that is to hire more firefighters. Statistically, if we look at back over at least the 5 to 10 year period since Mayor Cicilline, they've chronically understaffed the fire department. And they made the fiscal decision that it's cheaper to pay overtime than it is to hire new firefighters. And then they criticize us for working the overtime. You can't have it both ways.
Is that the case?
So we hired 110 firefighters under the past administration. We knew structurally we were under, and we needed to hire.
And you did see callback gradually go down,
We did see
right?
callback on the reform platoon system go down. On average, in the past 7 years, 8 years, it's costing us between $7 and $9 million structurally in overtime in the fire department. That's what this is about. This isn't about the quality of work that the firefighters do. It's not about any of those aspects. The mayor came in, had an independent review done of the city finances. That's public. There's no question that it's accurate. And he is taking action to structurally change that.
We're already in a position where there are about 365 platoonable firefighters right now. About
Yes.
70 are out in some form of leave. Are we getting to a point where you're not going to see any savings if you don't hire more firefighters?
So since the platoon change
Yeah.
on August 2nd, couple of things that have happened. I mean, they're not happy. You've seen it publicly. You've seen the reaction of our firefighters. And a couple of things have happened that are driving the cost to increase, at least in August and nearly all of September. And that's the use of sick time and the number of IODs, injury on duty, have spiked, particularly after the first week of the platoon system change from a 4 to a 3. We saw a huge increase in IODs.
Are they faking it?
Well, I think they've come to work prior, maybe a little bruised, and now they're going out. So, I mean, they got to be a part of the solution. And right now, some of them are causing a problem.
Paul, it sounds like the question is,
Shenanigans?
should these guys tough it out?
Listen, the unions agreed to a process with the city in the collective bargaining agreement of how a member can claim IOD status. It involves an emergency room doctor, the member's physicians, the city has an independent exam, and if there's a disagreement, there's a neutral exam. My understanding is that there's been no disagreement by the city doctor on any of the injuries.
I get you. They're falling within the collective bargaining agreement, and that
And
you're a good
what's really
lawyer, and
the
that's what
rules?
you're saying. There's been a spike. Is this a coincidence, Paul?
No, if you take a look at what they're asking us to do, it's to work more hours with half the time off that we had
So
before.
you're saying the increased shift is causing this, not trying to send a message to City Hall?
Absolutely not trying to send a message. I think that the other things that we've done have sent a message, and I know that this isn't going to be solved in the public. It's going to be solved by smart people like the City Council looking and saying, is this a solution that works? Is this litigation going to succeed?
So, Commissioner, people at home understand the shift is 10-hour day, 10-hour day, you're off, and then you have two 14-hour overnights.
2 10-hour days, 2 14-hour nights.
Thank you.
2 days
There
off.
isn't so okay.
Correct.
That sounds. Look, we had Ken Block in the studio, and this is somebody
Sorry
who's been.
about
This is someone who's
No
been
fan
critical
of
of firefighters. He sat here and said, "Man, that is unsafe." Ken Block said that. Now I know he's not a firefighter public safety expert. Are you concerned, particularly about that second 14-hour shift?
No, so they're working a 10-10, 14-14, 2 days, 2 nights, 2 off. Same schedule that they were working prior to the platoon change, except they have 2 days off rather than 4.
That's a big difference, though.
It is, but 2 days off is typical of what police and other professions, have been doing for years. So, the spike happened with IODs, and, I disagree with the president that 4 days after the implementation, I can go into, the emergency room and say I have certain symptoms and get a slip to go off. And there's nothing the city can immediately do to reverse that. And so the spike isn't coincidental. I think the firefighters are upset and frustrated, and where they'd otherwise come right back to work, they're going out. And on the second point, it's statistically impossible for the number of sick days that are being used is almost 3 times higher on the weekend during the weekday. That's controlled by the membership, and that's something that we have to take responsibility for as a fire department.
One last question.
I want to stay on the shift schedule. Paul, I've reported that this is the only schedule like this in the entire country, right?
For a reason.
And Mayor Lorza has said, I'm more than open to making a change. What change would you like to say?
I'd like to go back to the 4 shifts, start negotiations.
But that's a dead end.
That's
we know
not
that.
going to happen. So is there would you be willing to consider 24-hour shift, something like that?
Well, the mayor's trying to have the best of both worlds. He's the one who changed this. He doesn't need my permission under his legal process, his legal reasoning.
But in order to save
implement
your
it.
members, for health purposes.
Well, then he should talk to us, maybe commission a study, or maybe even talk to anybody that's involved in the fire service. So far, he never talked to the fire chief, never talked to any outside consultants that are involved with the fire service. Nobody before he did this.
Paul, I want to commend you for successfully shifting the topic with my first question about the picketing. You did a good job on that. But I do have one last question before we go to a break. How much union business do you guys call out for?
I wouldn't know that number. I know there's a lot of time, especially with negotiations, mediation, preparation for arbitration, preparation for grievance.
I think we get a small taste of what it must be like to sit around a collective bargaining table. I appreciate both of you coming on the program. President of the Providence Firefighters Union, Paul Doughty, Public Safety Commissioner Stephen Pare, thank you for joining us. When we come back, a reporter's roundtable. We're going to dive into what we've learned in the 38 Studios document dump. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right, WPRI.com reporter Dan McGowan, and I'm also joined by my colleague from Target 12, Walt Buteau. I've been spending way too much time with the both of you over the past 24, 36 hours. We've been locked in a war room of sorts going through 38 Studios. Those documents were released from the lawsuit on Thursday, late Thursday afternoon. To both of you, we've probably just hit the tip of the iceberg on tens of thousands of pages. Dan, what was your big takeaway first from the documents?
I think when you look at the list of who was deposed and you start to go through it, just the wide-ranging scale of this entire issue, this is something that's obviously captivated the public, but this goes to the highest levels in state government, right? Three governors, Kachiri, Chafee, and of course Raimondo, goes to our top business leaders. I think that's the thing that people at home really kind of need to understand. This touched lots of different areas, and when you find out, as you reported this week, that this was going back to 2009, a lot of things that a lot of lawmakers were kind of kept in the dark about, it's just really striking that all of these people in some way were involved in this. Yeah. And then how just colossally it failed.
And they're casting a wide net and all of that. What do you think, Walt?
You know what, I think I'm amazed at how much we didn't know and how much we thought we knew, but also at the personalities that sort of are revealed in emails.
What do you mean?
So we see Lincoln Chafee running for governor. We see Frank Caprio running for governor. We see Gina Raimondo running for governor. We see all these people out there in the public eye. They talk to us in a certain way, but emails sort of shed a different light on things. Handwritten notes shed a different light on things. Governor Chafee's handwritten note that or it wasn't his handwritten note, but a handwritten note by the legal counsel for EDC to his chief of staff that the governor didn't want anything to do with it. He didn't want to be part of the 38 story, and that Governor Chafee, and this was in 2011, January 2011, as Kurt Schilling was saying, I need some help. I want to meet with the EDC, and Governor Chafee, according to this handwritten note, forbade the meeting. So again, Governor Chafee presents one thing to us, and also in his deposition that he was all for it once it was approved, but another thing behind the scenes, and I think we learned other stories from other depositions like that. So,
sticking with that, the Chafee angle, Kurt Schilling has, I guess for a lot of people, been sort of a four-letter word around here, but do you think, based on that specifically, that he has a right to feel somewhat vindicated at all?
He is.
Look, he wasn't a great businessman. I'm not editorializing when I say that. I think that's clear, but that's also not a crime.
Right.
But this has been his argument all along, that the governor wanted to torpedo the company. Do you think there's some merit based on what
Well, there's no way the governor torpedoed the company. The governor might have sort of ignored the company as the head of the EDC. I will say, though, Curt Schilling takes a lot more grief than he should, and I'm not saying that so that he'll do an interview with us. He came here. Went to Mass. They wouldn't give him the money. He comes here. We gave him the money, right?
Right.
What did he do wrong? Other than perhaps didn't run the company as well as he did. He was undercapitalized. So yeah, some of his tweets and some of his comments, I think, are a little over the top. Nobody torpedoed his company. His company probably was not going to do well from the beginning. They didn't have enough money.
Yeah, and don't you think, I mean, because I tend to agree with you. I think that certainly the public here, with all eyes on 38 Studios, and you say Curt Schilling, okay, it's got to be his fault, but this is a guy who lost $30 million of his own money and this kind of thing. And but when you look at it, he has kind of failed to admit, I wasn't a very good businessman.
Right.
Clearly
I agree.
that's the
true.
case. We're learning that. And I think he needs to probably be a little more apologetic to taxpayers before anyone's going to forgive him or anything like that.
Well, and the whole deal, I mean, the company was saddled with an enormous amount of overhead. I mean, the amount of employees that they had to hire in order to trigger the different payments was just untenable, especially now that we know how much money they were hemorrhaging per month that was going out the door. You found in your reporting that the state police have paid a couple of visits to a few people who were deposed.
Yeah, we now know that we've heard about this years in the making, criminal investigation, but we really have heard nothing else. We know still it's ongoing. Didn't learn too much there, at least on the Attorney General side, but we did learn. You look at Stephen Costantino's deposition; he was visited by state police. You look at Sean Eston, who was worked for the EDC. He was talked to by state police. So clearly, the state police have these documents. They're going to be looking at them. We know there's a big team in place to look at it. But a lot of these people, I wouldn't be surprised if they talk to state police as well as the lawyers in this civil suit.
Well, one angle you're working on is it just seems like some of the board members of the EDC just didn't do their homework. The homework was there.
Well, it's right here, and this was it's a strategy analytics insights for success. It talked about 38 Studios' potential and the whole gaming industry's potential. It's lukewarm at best. And also, it points out it's a hard business to succeed in. Not to, again, say that Curt Schilling wasn't a bad businessman, but it's a hard business to succeed in. You need a lot of money. It says that it's like, I think you've said it to me, it's like making a movie.
It's like the movie industry.
Making a movie, and it better be good.
The overhead is crazy.
It better be good.
Yeah.
And he ran out of money. But here's the scary thing. According to several depositions and one document in particular, EDC board member after EDC board member after EDC board member said, I didn't read it. I skimmed it. The governor, the former governor, Don Kucheri, said he did not read it.
And these are our top-notch business leaders.
And the one person who's told me he did read it voted no.
So Michael Corso, have you guys read the deposition of Rick Wester? I have. He's a CFO of what was 38 Studios at the time. One thing that really struck me is, so Michael Corso, Providence attorney, close ally to Speaker Fox, central in getting the deal here. He was poised to make 5% of the $75 million, so that's $3.75 million. What we've been able to confirm is it looks like he was paid more than $2 million of that. It's not clear if it's on top of the other, whatever. But what's stunning to me is the CFO couldn't answer that question. Here's the guy that has the purse strings on the company. The money's supposed to go out the door through his office. He has no idea how much Mike Corso was paid at the time. Now, a lot of people probably have some feelings about how much Mike Corso was paid, but Dan, his job as a tax broker is to make this capital happen. I mean, he did do his job. As you point out, Curt Schilling, they needed money. He delivered.
Mike Corso didn't just do his job. He delivered and did his job
$75 million,
very well.
Yeah.
You tell any business person you can get them $75 million in public money, they mostly are going to laugh you out of the room. He was able to do it and do it relatively
for
quickly.
a measly $3 million.
Right, for a 5% commission.
For a 5% commission. So
that's
there's
right.
no question. He delivered, did his job very well. What's scary is that the access that he had to be able to pull, the trigger and make this happen to the speaker, to lots of different players around the State House.
But we have less than a minute here. That's something that is seeing the sausage made here is so. I don't know. It's just like.
It is who you know.
Yeah.
It is absolutely
it's
who you know.
depressing, isn't it?
And you wonder what is that? What is the skill set of a Mike Corso? I'd like to know. I just would like to know.
Well, obviously, very skilled attorney in his set,
and knows enough people that he could get this done. When I don't know how many people could have gotten it done.
All right, we have only touched on what we've uncovered. If you want to see it, we have this great live blog on our website. I can't believe Ted Nesi has the day off, but it is on WPRI.com. Anything we find, when we find it, we put it on that live blog, so be sure to go there. For Walt Buteau, Dan McGowan, I'm Tim White. We will see you next week on Newsmakers.